Hello there. I thought we could talk about Candice Owens and this sort of seemingly anti-Semitic rabbit hole she slipped into. I say seemingly because she tries to differentiate between what she considers a Frankist cult, essentially identifying themselves as Jews in order to escape criticism, and she tries to separate that from Jews in general, but she basically believes that a lot of how to put it, historical conspiracy theories and blood libels and stuff like that against Jews in the past were totally correct and committed by these guys. And it also, they envisioned Israel way before World War II, and basically used it as an excuse for the creation of this state, that they control Israel and that they control America through Israel. Essentially, she has some very interesting and colorful beliefs. So let's have a view, shall we?
Many moons ago, before they decided to establish Israel as a country. I know you've read like the short version in the classroom, and it was like, oh, the Holocaust happened, and then we realized that Israel needs a state. No, that's not how it went down. That's not how it went down at the F all, okay? Catholics and Christians were going missing on Passover, and then they would find bodies, okay, across Europe, and they were able to trace them back to Jews. Blood libel. They weren't Jews, okay? These were Frankists. And so just like Leo Frank killed Mary Fagan on Passover back in 1913 or 1914, I can't remember the exact date, he did it during Passover for a reason. This Frankist cult, which is masquerading behind Jews, still participates in this shit to this day, okay? Why would you want, as a small nation that is the size of New Jersey, okay, why would you want the pedophiles to flee there? Like, why would you want the pedophiles to be procreating? Unless the nation of Israel may have been established by some Frankists. And it's looking like Theodore Herzl's family was from the exact same area in Moravia and in Bohemia where the Frankist cult was founded. Crazy, crazy. When you get into his family, that like maybe Theodore Herzl, who wrote in a book that he didn't care how many Jews had to die for him to get the state of Israel, like maybe he was not actually a Torah worshiping Jew. Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing out some ideas here. And by throwing out some ideas, I mean, I've read a ton of books and I've figured it out. Okay. I am just like so over the idea that Israel is our ally and friend. If another person says that stupid statement, I'm going to personally punch you in the face. I am. It's going to be me. That's a joke. Don't take this video off of Twitter. Wink.
So there you go. Essentially, the people who established the state of Israel weren't really Jews. They were cultists. They didn't care how many Jews died in the making of it, and they want the bad guys that are bad, especially to children. These guys, they want them to come in, and essentially the state of Israel is not their ally of America, according to Candice, because it's the bad guys. Interesting. I'm not sure where you're getting all of it, but I don't know. Living in Israel doesn't feel like that. I don't particularly see any, how should I put it, public sentiment against America at all. In fact, America is very popular here. People, support America. People love America. People love the American people. For the most part, yes, apart from, I'd say, the far left, which also hates, our own country. But that's normal, right? The far left everywhere hates the West and their own country. But for the most part, people here are pro-West, and they are pro-America. And also, I don't think the bad guys that the bad children are very popular here. I'd say, in fact, they're quite hated. So I'm honestly not sure where she brings all of that up from, but there you go. That's what she thinks, and she basically has a lot of similar clips, like this one. She's essentially claiming that people demand she bend the knee to Israel.
More here that I didn't leave. So much more that I could say. So much more history that I studied. There's a lot behind my refusal, my absolute refusal to bend the knee to Israel, as many American politicians have done. So there's too much that I've learned about their history, about what was done to Christians, which they're alleging now is blood libel. None of that's real. It didn't happen. Well, they're convincing Jewish people, like actually Jewish people, people that practice Judaism as a faith, who are not Frankists, who are brilliant people who could research this and actually tell you what is going on. In fact, I read the books from the Israeli historians, Shlomo Sand being one of them, who has been writing about what is happening. People that have written about the Jewish mystic tradition, like the Christian mystic tradition, again, not Christian. These people are not Jewish. In my view, they are Satanists, and they have infiltrated our faiths, and we have to come together to recognize this. Most people don't know. They think that the nation of Israel was established because of World War II. No, there was a lot going on leading up to that. Learn about the Damascus affair of 1840. Learn about what happened to Esther Salamisi in Austria in 1880 thereafter. Okay, there were Christians that kept going missing on holidays, and the entire Christian world rose up and began publicizing, trying to point to what they deemed to be a satanic cult.
There you go. That's why I said that it's sort of anti-Semitic. She specifically differentiates and claims that there's a similar cult within Christianity, so I'm not sure I can specifically say that this is enough to convict her in my mind of anti-Semitism, but there's a bit more to it. You can see that she worked in the Daily Wire, everybody knows, and she quit after some certain infighting around the sort of response Israel has to the October 7th massacre. So, essentially, she tweeted things like, no government anywhere has the right to commit a, let's say, mass ending of people from a certain population, ever. There's no justification for it. I can't believe this even needs to be said, or is even considered the least bit controversial to state. Essentially, people are saying that, of course, this statement is not controversial, rather using it in regards to the Israel-Palestinian conflict is quite controversial. Not least because there have been so many accusations in the past of the exact same thing against Israel, claiming that my country is doing this to the Palestinians. And then if you actually bother to open any book on the subject, look at the statistics, you'd find out that the sheer number of people being ended is a tiny percentage. I don't think there's ever been a conflict in which even 1% of the population was ended, let alone, of course, 50% or more, as is alleged in the actual thing that happened in Europe to Jews. So people are saying you're taking it out of context. The absolute number and the percentage of people actually being in this conflict is anywhere near the scale that it needs to be in order for you to declare such a thing. Not to mention the amount of armed, militants out of those being ended is much higher than in pretty much any other Western conflict with a sort of guerrilla organization. You have American generals and British generals and so on going on about how the Israeli military is much better at identifying hostiles within a very dense civilian population in, let's say, a city, and can carry out operations there with a minimum of civilian casualties that is to be commended. So I'm not trying to say that Israel never makes mistakes or that no civilians have ever been harmed, but at least before this conflict, there has been a very clear attempt to frame my country for things that clearly didn't happen. Even if you take the official numbers from the Palestinian Authority or from Hamas, they were still nowhere near the kind of numbers that you'd need in order to declare anything, trying to, mass and the local population. That's just absolute fact. So I do think that trying to frame things with this language has definitely caused people to consider her on the side of the the Palestinians, or perhaps more likely because she has never bothered to show any care for them before, against the Jews, which is, yeah, what you'd expect from an anti-Semite. Now, this is another post that she made. Quote. It's from I believe it's from the Gospel, from the New Testament. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. No one can serve two masters. That's the second paragraph. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. And she concludes with, you cannot serve both God and money. And after this, she essentially had a spat with Ben Shapiro, who was her boss at the time in the Daily Wire. Basically said that if she thinks that taking his money is coming in between her and God, then she is free to leave. And she left not long after. Now, there are two interpretations that seem obvious to me for what she's saying here. One is that she is saying that the people being persecuted for righteousness are the Palestinians, because she said all of this sort of in response to the conflict and as part of her, how to put it, tiff with the Daily Wire over the subject. So if she's trying to say that the Palestinians are, the good guys here, she's very much saying that in her belief, then being good means being in conflict with Israel on religious grounds. On the other hand, she might be saying that peacemakers are people who are trying to oppose the war. In which case, she's probably talking about herself being persecuted for trying to criticize Israel in the war against Gaza, which I'd say is full of hubris and perhaps a bit delusional. Regardless, it was not a good look. She tried to say, she concluded with Christ is King, and tried to essentially make the entire thing about that last statement, claiming that Ben Shapiro hates Christians and is very much against saying Christ is King, and that's why the whole thing happened. Somehow, I doubt it. I am more inclined to believe that it's because she tried to not only heavily criticize Israel and claim that there's, crimes against humanity essentially being perpetrated, but also paint the entire conversation with religious undertones, or even more than that, made it very obvious that the conflict is religious to her. And people essentially took it as, her being an anti-Semite, which is fair enough, I guess. Now, Candice Owens claimed that it was a Christian mass ending being ignored. And that might have been true. We had a resolution from the House of Representatives, unanimously passed 393, I believe, to 0, to provide relief to survivors of this mass ending committed by the, Islamic State, ISIS, against Christians, Yazidis, and Muslim minorities. So there has been unanimous condemnation of, the crimes against minorities and, in particular, Christians in the Middle East. And Candice Owens is criticizing Israel for selling the guns that were used for this, right? The biggest issue she has with Israel is the country is supplying the arms to end Christians in Armenia. For whatever reason, it seems to be the circumstances that when Jewish people are ended in Israel, it's wall-to-wall coverage, but when Christians are ended all over the world, nobody talks about it, she said. Everyone wants to correlate everything to World War II. Everyone wants to talk about, the Austrian painter, and rightfully so, he was a horrific person, but nobody wants to talk about Soviet secret police official Genrik Yagoda, right? Nobody wants to talk about the Bolsheviks. Nobody wants to talk about the Christian mass ending. She went on, I am tired of the media, exhausted of the media, not speaking about what is happening to Christians all around the world. It is especially horrific while, at the exact same time that it is happening, the mass ending of Christians in Armenia, the arms being supplied by Israel, that the media turns the other way and says, oh, okay, but what about what's happening in Israel? So I'm asking a simple question. She also essentially tried to say that Israel is, how to put it, creating apartheid with the Muslims, that they had the Muslim quarter in Jerusalem where it's the only place that they're allowed to live. And it's not true. There is a Muslim quarter where basically there's a Muslim community living, but they're free to live anywhere else too. It's just that there's a lot of them living in a community there, and they like having neighbors, live the same lives as they, believe the same as they, etc. I believe there's also the Christian community there, and there's a Jewish community there, and basically each one is sort of congregating in one place so that they have their own community by choice. They're legally allowed to go anywhere else too. And the question is, why is Candice Owens so hung up on Israel? Because the thing is, even if she's correct, and I haven't checked, I don't really care, even if she's correct and Israel sold the arms, who held the arms? Who pulled the trigger, Candice, on the Christians? Oh, that's right. It's Muslims. And it's the same Muslims that you are trying to defend, from Israel from. And I'm sorry, that you're trying to defend against Israel. The same Muslims that are ending Christians. I mean, if you look at what happened to the Christian population in Gaza or in the Palestinian Authority controlled regions, they're basically gone. So why do you not care when it's anyone other than Jews harming Christians? Why, even when it is someone other than Jews harming Christians, you focus on the Jewish link? If you condemned anyone involved in harming Christians, I might believe that you are pro-Christian. Because you basically ignore any harm done to Christians other than by Jews, I can't help but feel as though it's that you hate Jews more than you like Christians. And I guess this is sort of one of the things that convinces me that she is very anti-Jewish. Candice Owens is... I won't say she's not eloquent or that she's not intelligent, because she's both. But I think she is trying to sort of find legitimacy despite what seems to, at least to me, to be feelings against Jews, hatred. And so she's trying to tiptoe around the issue and sort of justify it in a way that the public might accept. Talking about cults in the population or stuff like that, and that was done after, I believe, far long after her entire spat with the Daily Wire. I won't say that I endorse the Daily Wire 100%. I think Ben Shapiro is, like I said, entertaining and quick-witted, but that doesn't mean that I like everything he does. I think he was wrong on many issues in the past. I will say that it is, to me, the criticism of him prioritizing his loyalty to Israel to his loyalty to America seem to have at least some founding. I think such things are counterproductive too. I think he would be doing Israel more of a service if he absolutely avoided being viewed as such. But that's another conversation entirely. Everything said and done, Ben Shapiro has been an effective messenger for the right, and I'm definitely not condemning him. I'm just saying that he's flawed, like many other public officials. Not officials, public characters. But despite all of that, Candice Owens came off the worst in my personal view. Like, it says here that Candice Owens focused on the crisis king thing, and I think a lot of Christians bought into it. Tried to frame it as, well, this is clearly a case of persecution for being Christian. Which begs the question, how did she last so long in the Daily Wire? I mean, if Ben Shapiro outright hates Christians, why did it take him so long to just oust her and have a spat with her over something as innocuous as a Christian believing that Christ is king? I mean, don't pretty much all of them do, if they're religious at least? I really don't understand the logic behind it. It seems obvious to me that it's because she dragged the conflict she had with him over Israel's response to the October 7th massacre to religious grounds, tried to criticize the response on religious grounds using religious language in scripture. And that's what exploded the whole thing. But maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to hear from you if you think otherwise. Regardless, I think Candice Owens is by no means the only Christian that tries to frame their anti-Semitism with legitimate criticism of Israel. And I'm not saying that you can't criticize Israel without being an anti-Semite. I definitely think you can. I do it all the time. What I can say is that if your worldview centers around criticism of Israel and Jews, and you can see that essentially you claim to care about these issues, but you only ever frame them as how is the Jew connected to it, how is the fault of Jews, then I'd probably say that that's hypocrisy and probably driven by anti-Semitism. Like I said, if Candice Owens cared about Christians being persecuted everywhere around the world and mostly blamed the people doing the persecution, I would definitely be more inclined to forgive her criticisms of Israel as well-intentioned. However, since she seems to focus only on Israel regardless of who is actually doing the ending of Christians, yeah, I don't buy it at all. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.